everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Ange, and today is going to be my February wrap-up. So, February went fast, but also really slow at the same time. I don't know if anybody else felt that way, but that's really how I felt. Yeah, I just felt like it was really slow. So, I don't know. Anyway, I was able to read 7 books in February, which is awesome. I don't really know how that happened, but it did. Also, I apologize for looking like a mess, but you know what? I just got off work, and this is what you get. It's real life, you know? I've been busy. So it's like my only free time to do it. So I slept on some mascara and a little brow gel and called it good. So let's get into this. The first book that I read, oh my goodness gracious. Actually, the first book that I finished in February was Crooked Kingdom, but I talked about that in my January wrap up, pretty sure. Anyway, it was really good. Gave it 4 stars. I think I already talked about that. So that's not considered in my 7. That was just separate. First book that I read, Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. This is book 2 of C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia series. Read this in one sitting. It doesn't take long. It's really easy to read. I actually prefer this one so much to the movie. I also hate that the movie, like this is the movie cover, which is really weird because none of the other covers look like that in the box set. So super weird. Anyway, I prefer this one to the movie because it's so much quicker and stuff happens so much faster and is shorter than I remember it. I feel like the movie drew out some things and this one just went by really quickly. I also do prefer like the beginning. They get to Narnia really fast. Whereas in the movie, like World War II is happening. So like there's bombs, air raids and stuff that is happening. And the students go to the countryside to see the professor, and then like it takes them a while to even get to Narnia. This was so much quicker, and I actually really preferred that. I forgot how good this book was. It's so good. I feel like I even might have teared up at one point. There's a really good chance. Also, this copy has like images from the movie, so that's really funny. But really good. That's the only one of the series that I read this month. Nate's already finished with it, so it's not even a race anymore. So I'm just going to read them when I can. When I have some downtime, it'll be fine. I'm not in any hurry to read them. This is my 3rd time going through the first 5, and it'll be my 2nd time going through 6 and 7. So, actually, I think I gave it 5 stars. I definitely gave it 5 stars. This was my January book of the month. This is Reckless Girls by Rachel Hawkins. This was my first disappointing read of the year, I think. I gave this one 3 stars. I was really disappointed. This was calling for like a thriller. I think it was called like a thriller. Rachel Hawkins is the author of The Wife Upstairs, The Woman Upstairs. One of those 2, I can't remember, I'm sorry. And this had like a really good premise, and I thought it sounded really good. There's this couple living in Hawaii, and these these college girls come and ask the boyfriend to be like, hey, can you commandeer us on our little trip? We want to go to this deserted island that is like, has a reputation for weird things happening on it. It's called Morose Island. And like there's a shipwreck there, and then like the people that were on the shipwreck that survived kind of went crazy and like turned to cannibalism and all that stuff. So it's kind of like a haunted vibe almost, but not. And so they go and they arrive on the island because so the boyfriend is just like, he likes to sail. He's really good at it. He has his own boat, all this stuff. And so they go and there's already people there. And so you're like, oh, this is weird. And they're kind of sketchy, kind of weird. And then someone else shows up on the island and is like, makes it even more sketchy. So I think there's a total of 7 people on the island. And it's supposed to, I don't know, they like kind of tour the island. They're just kind of lounging around. You're not supposed to eat the fish, they're poisonous. And it just seemed like I don't know, stuff started to happen, and I don't know, I didn't get the thrill from this. It didn't, like, I never felt suspenseful. I didn't feel like, eerie. I was kind of just bored with it. And another thing with this is that they're there, but then, and it's just from one person's point of view, which is the girlfriend. And you get like these little throwback chapters of different characters that are on the island with them. So you're getting a little bit of their background, and so you can kind of know a little bit about the characters, but not really. It just, nothing even happened until the very, 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 very end, and it wasn't that exciting. So I was really disappointed by this one. The next book that I read is actually nonfiction, and it was recommended by my sisters and my mom, so I read it, and it's amazing. It's called Soul Care by Dr. Rob Reimer. It's the 7 Transformational Principles for a Healthy Soul. This is a really, really great book. It is from a Christian viewpoint. It's kind of like a self-reflection on your spirit and like the Holy Spirit and yourself as a Christian. Like, are you right with God? Have you forgiven people? Have you looked at, like, do you have any secrets, any past sin? Like, it's just like finding freedom in deliverance and just like kind of getting yourself right with God and like taking care of your soul. It was really, really good. I read a chapter a night when I was doing my Bible reading, and just like, it was so stinking good. I'm glad that I got a physical copy because there are a lot of highlights in here. It was so good. Very eye-opening, very healing, freeing, super good. Highly recommend it for anyone who is a Christian and interested in that. And even if you're not a Christian, I still recommend it if you're interested in healing your soul. Very good. I gave it on 5 stars, obviously. It was really good. It's probably actually my favorite Christian nonfiction that I've read. Okay, the next 2 that I read were a little weird after reading that book, because I read House of Earth and Blood, Crescent City 1. And it was a little weird because I was just feeling like I had just come from reading this book. I was actually almost reading it in tandem a little bit, but like going back from like this real life stuff to then going to like the fantasy world with like angels and fae and wolves and demons and stuff like that. It was a really weird, I was having a weird disconnect from it. So it took me a minute to get into it, but it's so good. Oh my freaking gosh. Y'all, okay, so I read House of Earth and Blood because the second one was coming out in February, and I wanted to read it before it came out. I didn't finish it before the second one came out, but that's okay. I finished it, and I loved it so much. So it's about this girl named Bryce, and she is a half fae, half human, and she is just living her life. She's living in Crescent City, and she's like she works for a museum, like kind of like a curator, kind of like a person who maintains the collection, and works for a sorceress named Jessica. She and her best friend Danica, which is hilarious because I have a best friend named Danica, and it was just really funny. Anyway, she has a best friend named Danica who is gearing up to be like the head alpha of the wolf pack. They're party girls. They like to party. There was drug usage that I was not expecting, drinking and just like partying and stuff. And then right away into the book, something traumatic and tragic happens, and next thing Bryce knows, she's teaming up with this angel named Hunt to find a demon that's been on the loose and has been killing people. So yeah, they team up and are kind of working together to figure out some stuff, and they uncover some secrets. They learn some new things. There's so much to this. I like this because it's another one of those like fallen worlds, so there's a lot of different creatures and characters. And I just really like those stories. I always have. this book has so much stuff. I want to talk about it, but I can't because I don't want to like accidentally spoil anything. So I'm going to keep it very simple as that. Bryce is really awesome, and all the side characters in this one are really awesome as well. The ending, so this is a huge book, 800 pages. The last 200 pages are insane, and I sobbed through the last 100 pages. So literally the ending of that book was just so emotional, and I had so many feelings, and it was just so freaking good. And then after I finished that one, I immediately started House of Sky and Breath, which is Crescent City 2, which came out on February 15th, and I started reading it on the 17th, 18th, a few days later. Holy freaking crap. Holy freaking crap, you guys. If you've read House of Earth and Blood and then you've read House of Sky and Breath, you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying. The last chapter of that book blew my mind out of the freaking water. Literally insane. I have an entire reading vlog on this. It's really long, but I couldn't cut anything out because it was just how I was feeling and what I was hypothesizing and theorizing as I was reading it. So go check that out if you're interested. It was like, if you're not even interested in most of it, but you want to know my reaction to the end, just go to the end because I have no words and I cannot wait to freaking talk about it. My manager is currently reading it and I'm like, please just get to the last chapter. Just like finish the book already. It's so good. And I'm not going to say anything about the second book because that will give away stuff from the first book. So I'm not going to. Just know and trust me when I say it's phenomenal. Both of these I gave 5 stars. Interesting enough, I actually think I prefer the first book to the second book. The second book was absolutely amazing, but it was super chaotic, which I totally love. I love chaos. But the thing is, the last 200 pages, this is another 800 page book. The last 200 pages weren't as emotional and dramatic as the first book, in my opinion. The only exception is the last chapter of House of Sky and Breath. But the rest of it, I didn't have that heart-wrenching excitement. You know, I really, really, really loved the first book's ending. The second one was still really good and totally shocking and amazing, but just not in the same way that the first one was. So for that, I think I prefer the first one. But now I'm like just gearing up and I'm so excited. So excited for the next book. I've rattled on all about that enough. I'm sorry. If you want more thoughts on it or my thoughts on it, go to my reading vlog because it was so good. So after I read that book, I needed something to just get my mind off of it because I had just read 2 800-page books and it took me probably like 3 weeks. I think House of Earth and Blood took me 2 weeks, and then House of Sky and Breath took me a week. I needed a breather. So I read The X Talk by Rachel Solomon, and it was so freaking cute, you guys. So my husband is a massive Frasier fan. If you haven't seen the show Frasier, it's like a 90s sitcom. It's a 90s sitcom about a psychiatrist living in Seattle who does a radio show. And he talked about like mental health and all that. And so this is called The X Talk, and it is about this girl who has been working in this radio, like a radio network for the past 10 years. She's a producer. She's always wanted to be on the show. Her dad died when she was 19, and her and him have this connection with radio. And she's always wanted to be able to be on the radio to kind of make her dad proud. So she's been working there for 10 years, and this new guy comes in. She's 29, by the way. This new guy comes in and has been working there, and his name is Dominic. He is Korean American, and he has totally made the radio station manager like fall in love with him. It's a man, by the way. It's like the radio station is a man. He's a very misogynistic man. And so like obviously he loves Dominic and thinks he's the best thing ever. And takes like his opinions and thoughts over any of the females. The radio station is needing something new and fresh because their numbers just aren't doing that good. And with podcasts out there and everything, like radio, NPR just wasn't doing that great. So they needed a new idea. And so they have this meeting where people can pitch stuff, and the main character, her name is Shay. She pitches the idea of, she kind of mumbles it under her breath, the idea of like a dating show, but hosted by exes. They're like, oh, that sounds kind of interesting. So they sit on it for a couple days, and then the radio manager comes and is like, hey, I want you two to do the show, pretend to be exes, be these radio hosts together. And so they eventually agree to it, and they have to pretend to be exes, and it's just a romance. So you know they're gonna like fall in love. And it was really cute. I really enjoyed it. I've learned a new trope that I don't like, and that is the miscommunication trope in romance. It's my least favorite thing ever. Like, just talk to each other, figure things out. Miscommunication is stupid. It makes me so mad, because the whole thing could be avoided if they would just have a conversation. And so there is a tiny, tiny, tiny miscommunication towards the end, but it wasn't that bad, and I actually really enjoyed it. I gave this 4 stars. Yeah, and if you like Frasier, I highly recommend it. I like Frasier, I don't love it. And so I thought this was kind of a cute, modern, and more romantic version of Frasier, and so I really liked it. Last book, let's go. Technically, okay, you guys, oh my god, I can't. My legs are like not good. So today is March 2nd, and technically I finished the book yesterday, but I read the majority of it in February, so I'm considering it as February. And that, you guys, is It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. I am pleasantly surprised by this. So as I was reading this, I was like, ugh, I don't know how I'm gonna like this. I kind of was thinking it was gonna be a 3-star. I gave it 4. I'm gonna preface with saying, like, I know people will be like, it's categorized as a romance. It's not really about romance. I would call this contemporary fiction. It's about this girl who, what's her name? It's about this woman named Lily who grew up in an abusive household. She was never abused, but her mother was abused by her father. And she helps this homeless boy when he is living in the house that was empty next to them, helps him and kind of, provides a little bit for him. And then he leaves and goes to Boston. Flash forward 8 years or so. She's living in Boston. Her dad just died, and she's trying to figure out what to do. So she ends up meeting this guy named Ryle, who swears he will never date a girl, doesn't do romances, doesn't do commitment, only does like one-night stands. And he's a neurosurgeon. So they meet on a rooftop one night. End of story. And then a year, maybe not quite a year later, a little bit later, she is opening a flower shop called Lily's Blooms. And this really like rich lady walks in and is like, can I have a job? Like, she just is bored. She's super rich and just wants something to do. So she begins working for Lily, and they go out and like meet the rich woman's husband and her brother, which ends up to be Ryle. Oh my gosh. So inevitably Lily and Ryle sort of get together, and it turns into a very interesting relationship. Ryle gets pretty jealous easily and is quick to anger and lash out. And it almost seems as if Lily is repeating the past. This was a very, very, very interesting book. If you have any triggers for physical abuse, I would definitely check trigger warnings on this, because it does have abuse. I do want to say this, like, I read the author's note, and I'm really glad I did, because Colleen Hoover, she actually wrote this based off of her own situation growing up. Her father was abusive to her mother, but her mother had gotten out of the situation when her and her sister were young, so they never had to like see that part of their dad, and they ended up actually having good relationships with their dad because he was able to kind of change his behavior and knew what he was doing. So it's just really interesting knowing that and reading this. It gave me a whole new perspective on that, and I really enjoyed this book. It's crazy. The characters in this, I loved the homeless boy. He comes back into the picture. He owns a restaurant in Boston. So he's kind of there for a little bit. Knows of Lily's previous past, and wants to help if she's having issues in her present day life. Lily, I liked her, but there were times when her 24-year-old mind was like, does he like me? Does he not? Is this why? Like, just her thought process seemed really immature. And it was really interesting. I kind of got annoyed with her at times. I really loved Atlas. I loved the best friend, Alyssa, which is Ryle's sister. And you know what? I liked Ryle, though that is not excusing any of his behavior. I will say that. But I liked the character of Ryle. It was a really, really fascinating read. And I read this really quickly. It was super fast, a very quick read. I really liked how this ended. And I know she's writing a sequel, It Starts With Us, and I'm very excited to read that. I do plan on reading that. So it's a really interesting read. Anyway, sorry, this has been really long. I talked a lot about these books. That was all 7 books I read in February. And I am really looking forward to what I get to read in March. So I'm not going to blab on any longer. What was your favorite book that you read in February? Let me know. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. If you would like to find me on any other social media, I'm on Instagram and Goodreads, and I will link those down below for you. And I hope you guys have a fantastic week, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!